depth at the major league level for the corner infield spots for the Seattle Mariners is abysmal. In free agency, the Mariners should target numerous players to try and raise the floor of the talent level at the corner infield spots, and today I've got a couple guys' names that I'm going to bring up. In the previous video that I did about this with the catchers and DH, that free agent class, if you will, there's a name that I left off that, well, it's beneficial that he declined his player option from the Boston Red Sox. Justin Turner is now a free agent. Whether or not he's a fit for the Seattle Mariners, I'm not entirely sure. There is mutual interest that he would go back there. However, in 2023, he put up 2.1 WAR as a main DH. He did play first base a decent amount, played in like 48 games, so if it's 40 less games that Ty France needs to be over at first base, it's not a bad idea to maybe bring in Justin Turner if he's willing to. Obviously, he's had a very long career, as we can see here, but Justin Turner's been one of the most consistent hitters in all of baseball for the last, decade, essentially. Has not posted an OPS plus below 100 here since he finally kind of broke out into the major leagues. Last year, a 114 OPS plus at age 38. He's an old guy, but Justin Turner, the savant pages don't lie either. He could be a very good fit for us at the first base DH position that we would need to fill. Like I mentioned, this video, it is more so about the first base and third base positions, so that brings in Donovan Solano, another veteran of the game. Not as much pop for these corner infield spots, but it's a guy that's going to raise your floor, which is the main idea for some of these targets in free agency. Obviously, there's some bigger name guys that will definitely have a bit more impact than maybe a Donovan Solano would have. But for the Twins last year, Solano was actually really solid. Put up 1.8 WAR across 294 at-bats. Only 5 home runs right there. So the pop, it's just not there. But for the last 5 years, he's been pretty much above league average, except in 2022 with the Reds. But previously with the Giants, 116, 127, and 103 OPS plus. And then last year with the Twins, a 110 OPS plus. As far as positional fielding, first base, 85 games, 28 games at second base, 19 games at third base. He can play all over the infield. He played shortstop not too long ago in 2021. You probably don't want him there, but he can do it if you need him to. Donovan Solano, it's not a sexy pick, and I'm going to use that throughout the rest of these videos because that's just a phrase that I kind of want to address as they're not going to be the Cody Bellingers or the Shohei Ohtanis every single time. There are guys that you have to also go out and acquire that might not be exactly who you want, but could be who you need. There's not a lot of blue here. Any blue, it's not great. He doesn't chase. He doesn't whiff a ton. Overall, Donovan Solano, he could be a great contact bat to add to the Mariners bench and rotating third base, first base, DH role in 2024. Spot Rack has him at around $5 million a year. That's an easy contract to send over for a guy like Donovan Solano, in my opinion. But one of the big fish for the Mariners, I feel like that a lot of channels across YouTube and Twitter and everything else have talked about a ton. This guy, Jeimer Candelario, traded from the Nats to the Cubs last year. He's a switch hitter, but his splits, they don't really affect him that much other than his power. He is a stronger left-handed batter than he is a right-handed batter, but that's pretty common. And he can play third base and first base relatively decently. It's not, he's not going to go out there and win a Gold Glove at either position, but he can stand there and field the ball and not look silly. 3.1 WAR last year in 2023. He broke out during the COVID season, had a 137 OPS plus, and then continued that in 2021, where he would lead the MLB in doubles with 42, posting a 121 OPS plus. So he's got good extra base hit power. It's not a ton of pop. Last year, he eclipsed 20 home runs for the first time in his career at 22. So it's more of a doubles gap guy, which could honestly play to T-Mobile Park if he were to sign with the Mariners because it's a pretty pitcher-friendly park, but there's space out there in the outfield for him to hit some gaps. Jeimer Candelario, he's a guy that a lot of teams are going to be after. I think he makes a lot of sense for the Seattle Mariners to bring him in. Gives you high-level major league depth. It's not just these quad A guys that are going to go out there and get a spot start, give them a day off. It's, this guy is going to be competing for starts every single time. His Savant page, it doesn't look as good as Donovan Solano's, even though I would prefer Heimer Candelario over Donovan Solano. So again, take Savant pages with a grain of salt. There's some stuff here that's not entirely great, like the average exit velocity and the hard hit percentage. However, a team that desperately needs to cut down on the strikeouts and the chasing, it's not bad here for the whiff percentage, K percentage, and the walk percentage. It's getting closer to the red. Spotrac has him at about 11 million a year. I would be willing to even go up to maybe like 13 million a year, maybe 3 years, 13 million, so 39 total for Heimer Candelario. It might be a slight bit of an overpay, but we talked about it on the podcast earlier this week on Thursday that if the Mariners want guys to come in free agency, you might have to start overpaying just a tad bit to incentivize them, because for some reason they don't want to come here. You got to trade for everybody. Well, the way to sign guys is to give them money, and that's just kind of what you might have to do to get Heimer Candelario to T-Mobile Park in Seattle. These next two guys, I'm not going to lie to you, they're not my favorite picks from the bunch here, because they're former Los Angeles Angels, and they've been on a downturn. More so the first guy here, it's Jared Walsh. Had a great breakout year in 2021, but ever since then has not looked like the same player. He is a free agent. I think if it's a guy that you want to maybe take a flyer on, similar to maybe like the Colin Moran signing from last offseason, if you guys remember, it was a minor league contract. If Jared Walsh gets a major league contract, which I feel like he probably could, he's only 30, going to be 31. He'll probably get a major league contract, so maybe this is like a Tommy La Stella contract instead. Jared Walsh might not be a bad guy to take a flyer on, because he's only a couple years removed from a 127 OPS plus and 29 homers with almost 100 RBI. But it's hard to deny a 277 slash with a 340 OBP, 509 slugging, and an 850 OPS. He's played against Seattle a ton. He knows the park. Jared Walsh might be a guy you take a flyer on. The next guy, Giovanni Urshela, another kind of guy that's like Donovan Solano. He's going to be more of a contact guy. He did suffer a broken pelvis last year, so that's why he only played in 62 games. He'd be relatively cheap. He's only going to be around like $8 million a year if you maybe give him a 1-year prove-it deal if he wants to take it. He's been slightly above league average a couple of times here. A 133 OPS plus is actually really, really great, but that was in the juice ball era in 2019. But he's just a year removed from posting a 119 OPS plus with Minnesota. So if you want him to be an upgrade for your Sam Haggerty and Jose Caballero type players where he's not going to play every day, Urshela might not be a bad pick. But the guy that we've been wanting to give love to the entire offseason, a guy that even before this season, we're like, what if he was a Seattle Mariner? Rhys Hoskins, electric in Philadelphia, unfortunately did suffer a torn ACL at the beginning of the year during spring training. I don't know if he's really got interest in Seattle, but I know me and a lot of other people have interest in Rhys Hoskins, and that's for good reason. I will say, don't count on it, in my opinion, because if anything, he's probably just going to go back to Philly. I don't know what spot is looking like for him because Bryce Harper's playing first base. He's probably going to need a DH, and we know how Philadelphia's roster construction is with having poor fielders like Kyle Schwarber and Castellanos, who's actually been a little bit better in right field, but you get the point. The roster crunch there for Philadelphia might be a little funky, but Rhys Hoskins, if there's one thing he can do, he can hit the hell out of a baseball in a very strong way. Never posted an OPS plus below 100. Been a very, very good productive hitter. He did strike out a good amount in 2022, 169 strikeouts, only 72 walks. That was his highest strikeout rate of his career at 25.2%, but 25%, it's not nearly as bad as some of the 30% that we saw from the Seattle Mariners in 2023. Rhys Hoskins, he's a guy that would be an upgrade over Ty France at first base. The issue is he will cost a good amount of money, a pretty penny, if you will. Rhys Hoskins, his 2022 baseball savant, a lot of red, a whole lot of red for all you Cardi fans out there. Look at it. It's pretty. It's beautiful. But the thing that's not beautiful is the Mariners having to shell out potentially $20 million for a batter, which is something that this regime in the front office has never done. Rhys Hoskins, according to Spotrac, is at market value at $21 million for an annual average. So say you give him a 4-year deal, you're looking at $84 million being shoved out to Rhys Hoskins and his agent, Scott Boras. Likely not a fit, unfortunately, just due to circumstances. However, upgrading at first base does seem like a pretty reasonable ask for the Mariners going into 2024, or at least having some sort of insurance or backup plan with that position going forward. If any of these guys stood out to you, let me know down in the comments down below who you guys want the Mariners to sign or maybe go after, or someone I didn't even mention in this video, maybe like a Carlos Santana. Bring him back. I know people were pounding the drum for him last year, but first base, corner, infield, third base, I mentioned some guys at third as well. It's just, we need to raise the floor of this team, and it's time to start putting pen to paper and signing some checks for these guys. We talked about that in our last episode of the Hit It Here podcast. Make sure you guys go check out that episode if you haven't already. Thank you guys for watching this free agent profile breakdown for the corner infield. More free agency news to come because we got only a couple more days till we can start signing people. Thank you guys for watching, and go Mariners.